Hey there, Professor, look what I brought. Now tell me what's my rock.
Hey there, Rockhounds. Welcome to another episode of What's My Rock, the show where real people bring in their real rocks and I try to identify them. I'm your geology professor, Dr. Abstract. I'm here with my new friend, Mike. And Mike, may I ask where you live?
Yeah, I live right down in 215 Loma Linda.
Loma Linda,
Yeah.
okay. All
I used to live up in Victorville, but it was before I got into rocks.
Oh, okay, great. Well, there's better rocks in Victorville than Loma Linda, though. So...
I keep finding my way up to 395 looking for rocks.
All right. Then what got you into rocks?
So in 2022,
Uh-huh.
I was up at Seven Oaks
Uh-huh.
fly fishing along the headwaters of the Santa Ana River, and I found this cool looking rock.
Uh-huh.
And I always had sort of minor interest in rocks when I was little. A lot of kids do, but this rock just kept getting better the more I looked at it.
Uh-huh.
So I started going online trying to find out what it was, and I couldn't figure it out. So then I started looking at groups for rocks,
Okay.
and I still couldn't figure it out. And then I joined the Orange Belt Mineralogical Society right here in San Bernardino, and they know a lot of things, but nobody could figure that rock out. So but it got me into the rock hounding.
Okay.
So I found a lot of rocks since, but no one's been able to tell me the rock that got me started, what's in that rock. So,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Well, let's have a look at this rock now.
All right,
This
so-
this is the rock that got you started.
Yeah, it was a bigger piece. This is the last one of it left, and it's the one that got me started. So I won't finish this. I'm going to save this piece always.
Sure.
But yeah, I found this just sitting on sand, like the dry riverbed.
Uh-huh.
And it was different than all the other rocks because it had a green color on it.
Yeah.
And it had all these weird patterns. I don't know if some of it's like iron staining, but it had all these kind of wavy patterns on the outside, and it was really heavy when I picked it up.
Yeah. So that's the same rock. But it's...
Hopefully, yeah. So everybody at the club loved it. So I went up there recently, and the river had shifted.
Uh-huh.
So I was looking around, and then I saw this sitting, and it was the same kind of green color, waviness, and it was super heavy.
Yeah, I think these are the same.
I couldn't. It was the whole rock was too big to carry out. So I went back up with a little sled later, and I got it out.
Yeah, these are the same rock type.
Okay.
Let's just make some basic observations. Well, it's very green, as you say, and this is why it would catch your eye, because when you're up there, most of the rocks are gray.
Yeah, gray,
and
a lot of
white
granite
and black
looking
or
stuff.
something. Yeah, and so nothing against granite, but you know, after you've seen 10,000 boulders of granite, you kind of don't see them anymore. So this thing really pops out. It's got beautiful, what we call foliations.
Yeah.
So this will be a metamorphic rock for sure. Okay. That's a nice cutting job, by the way. Let's see, saw mark. Oh, there's a saw mark.
Yeah.
Okay, it's still a nice cutting job. That's a big cut.
Yeah, that's about a sixth of the rock. I couldn't carry it out. I had to bring something to drag it out.
You're dedicated. You saw this one while you're
fly fishing. Yeah, this one I went back up after just recently, a couple months ago, to look for it.
I'm concerned if you're fly fishing though, and you're noticing the rocks. You're not catching fish that day. Is that the
not catching fish? And also before the epic storms this year, the water was really low.
Oh yeah, that's a problem.
Yeah, they're real pressured. So when they're like that, I don't really like fishing for them. Leave them alone.
So this rock is actually, I wouldn't say it's common in the mountains, but it's not uncommon.
Okay.
You'll see them around. This is a rock called a calc silicate rock.
Okay.
Calc meaning calcium, silicate meaning silicon oxygen. So most minerals are silicate minerals. If you look at the formula of, say, muscovite mica, it's going to have the Si and an O in it. Quartz has Si and O. Garnets have SiO in them. And any mineral that has the Si and O at the end of the formula is a silicate. This is a calc silicate rock, which means this is a rock that contains a lot of calcium in it. You know, a long time ago, there was a big ocean in Southern California.
Okay.
And that ocean led to the precipitation of a lot of calcium carbonate minerals. And what happens is that material will build up and give that 100 million years and you get a limestone. And so those limestones were around the western United States. There are all these limestones that are everywhere. Those rocks preceded a lot of tectonic activity here in the western United States. The tectonic activity caused melting of rocks beneath. So now the limestone is where the calcium comes from, and the magmas is where the silicate material comes from. The magmas bring heat and they bring fluids and they bring silicate material in contact with these limestones. So the basic idea is that this rock forms by intermingling of two other kinds of rocks to make new minerals. So the minerals that are in here are going to be things that have calcium and silicon in them. So this pistachio green one right here, that's a mineral called epidote. Have you heard of epidote?
Yes.
Okay, so this is epidote. Another mineral that's probably going to be in here is diopside, which is a pyroxene mineral. That's probably what's going on in these green zones right there.
Yeah, or any of the lighter stuff. You know, when I cut it, sometimes I have to stabilize it because it wants to break, like kind of crumble or fall apart.
Well, that could be calcite. So because the ultimate calc mineral is going to be calcite. So let's go ahead and put a little bit. Is it okay if I put a little on this side? Yeah. Okay, let's just see if it fizzes. Is that fizzing? That's not fizzing there. Let's try a few spots. That's not fizzing there. Let's try this one. Maybe this is a little bit different. Although I don't see any white. I'm trying to put it on some of the lighter areas where there could be calcite, but nope. Let's try one more on the surface here. Looks like there's a little bit of fizz there. Do you see fizz?
Yeah, I see bubbles. Yeah, especially some of the porous areas and stuff. I see it reacting.
Yeah, I think there's a very faint amount of fizzing. So I think there's a little bit of calcite in there, which is not surprising, again, given how the rock formed, right? But there's not a lot of it. So I think this rock reacted a lot of its calcite away. So if you want to be really fancy to all your rock club fans, I'm going to call this is a green schist grade calcilicate schist or something like that.
Now I know what it is.
So,
I can feel it.
Green schist, that's just a word that we use that's associated with pressures and temperatures. Green schist grade rock forms, 400 degrees Celsius up to a pressure of maybe 10 kilobars off the top of my head. So sort of like mid-upper crustal conditions. So pretty common rock to find these. You'll see these all throughout. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some garnets in here. If you looked closely, you might find, like in these little zones right here, there's some little brown spots. Those could be andradite garnets or grossular garnets, things like that. And that's pretty much what you got here.
Cool.
All right.
Thank you.
It's called a calcilicate to be generic. How's that?
Yes.
Sounds good?
Sounds good.
Okay, good. All right. So let's put that one aside right now. And that's a really nice, I like it when they're cut. They look really pretty. Yeah. So, all right, what's your next rock?
Okay, next rock here. Let's see. So this rock, I don't have much more to show you. My friend found it in Cambria. It's about the size of a cantaloupe.
Okay.
And he gave me an end cut off it with enough for a slab on it. So I slabbed that out, and these are unpolished pieces. And these are some cabs I made from different sections of the rock. Some of the rocks seem to have more white in it. And it has these sort of black spots on them.
These are unusual looking rocks, I got to say. And they're from Cambria, which is that's up in Central California, just south of the Big Sur coast. Very beautiful area. The rocks up there are eroding from a very famous rock formation, which we call the Franciscan assemblage. Okay. Have you heard about that?
No.
Okay. It's a really wonderful group of rocks because what it essentially is, so when you have subduction, so here's the downgoing plate, right? Subduction, I assume okay. What happens is that there's stuff on, let's see if I can, I'm going to do this in a really dumb way. Okay. I'm going to make this thing. Okay. So there's sediment here, right? Okay. And as the subducted plate goes down, the sediment gets scraped up. Okay. And that's going to pile up on this side, right? Okay. So here we are. This is where California is. And there's a plate that is subducted. It's gone now. It's called the Farallon plate.
Okay. It's not like the Farallon Islands up there.
Exactly. Yeah. The Farallon Islands. So the Farallon plate's gone. It disappeared in our area, 20 million years ago or so, changed into the San Andreas Fault. But all that sediment got piled up on the upper plate where we are. We call that an accretionary prism or an accretionary wedge. Okay. That's nerd speak for all the sediment that gets scraped off the lower plate, off the downgoing plate, onto the upper plate. Now, during that scraping, it scrapes sediments, but it also scrapes some of the oceanic crust. And do you know what oceanic crust is made of?
I'm thinking maybe, I don't know, just guess the same like limestones and.
Well, there could be some limestone, but most of the crust is actually volcanic and plutonic. Is rocks that formed at a mid-ocean
now what does
ridge.
Plutonic mean?
Plutonic means a rock that cooled from a magma underneath the surface.
Got it.
Where does the igneous rock cool? If it cools inside the earth, we call it a plutonic rock or an intrusive rock. Or if the lava erupts to the surface, it becomes a volcanic rock or an extrusive rock. Those are the words. So all this is to say that when the scraping happens, going down here, we're scraping up sediment that's getting piled up. Bits of the oceanic crust that's volcanic and plutonic is going to actually get chunked off and pushed up on land.
Okay.
So we get these basaltic plutonic rock, which are gabbros,
Right. Okay.
and basaltic volcanic rocks, which we just call basalts. And so there's all kinds of weird stuff going on. It's like the whole Central California coast is just a jumble of rocks and goo that got scraped off the bottom and put on the top. It's just a mess.
Right.
But a delightful
It
mess.
makes for great rocks.
It makes for great rocks, right? And so off the top of my head, so it doesn't have those foliations in it,
Right.
right? So this is probably going to be an igneous rock. First of all, there's this white material in there.
Yeah.
That white material is probably going to be feldspar,
Okay.
probably plagioclase feldspar, like albite. There's a finer grain mass in there, which is probably going to be little chunks of more feldspar.
Okay.
But these big blobs, these dark blobs are interesting. There's a really fancy word called glomeroporphyritic, which means they're these bigger agglomerated crystals set in a finer grained, we call it a ground mass around it. I can see with my hand lens that there's some green stuff in the ground mass. That's probably chlorite. And then there's the dark stuff, the big giant dark blobs.
Yeah. I got to get a loop.
I like this one. It's from Belarus, which I think is kind of funny. I've never owned anything from Belarus, but it's got a good wide field of view.
Cool.
There are these brown crystals that are not particularly shiny. It's really fine grained. Knowing the geology up there, I'm wondering if it's going to be a pyroxene. If it's a pyroxene, that's what you'd expect in a gabbro. But the problem is I've never seen a gabbro that has these big splotches in it. This is some kind of a weird igneous rock with unusually large glomerocrysts.
Glomerocrysts, okay.
Agglomerated crystals, right? Agglomerations of multiple crystals. Or they could be something that we call oikocrysts. And an oikocryst is a wonderful word. Not oinkocryst, that's like a pig crystal. It's like oinkocryst without the N, right?
Right, oikocryst.
Oikocryst, that's right.
Sounds Greek.
It is definitely Greek. And an oikocryst is a mineral that grows around minerals that grew before it, and it hosts other crystals that were there before them. And so when I look at these big crystals, I can see that there's crystals in the middle that they grew around. This one almost looks like it has a happy face. And so that crystal that grows around it is often in a gabbro would be a pyroxene crystal.
Okay.
So I think this has these sort of pyroxene oikocrysts, or they're glomeroporphyritic pyroxene phenocrysts. I'm using a lot of big words here. But I'm just trying to impress the internet. No, actually, these are the words we would use.
Words I've come across, but still don't know what they mean yet.
That's right. So. On this side, it's interesting. When we look at the unpolished side, this one shows it pretty well. Some of them are kind of brown. Yeah. Some of them are darker. Now, the thing is that pyroxenes, when they react with water, they convert to hornblende. And hornblende is more of a black color. So it could be that some of these have converted to hornblende. It's a process called uralitization. Okay. But why didn't they all do that? Why are only some of them converted? So that I'm a little puzzled by this one, but I'm gonna say that this is most likely, and I'm happy to be corrected by the internet, and I surely will be. But I think we're gonna go with this is a gabbro. It's probably a poikilotic gabbro, which means poikilotic means it has these host crystals, these oikocrysts that contain other small crystals, and the oikocrysts they're pyroxene. Some of them appear to have been altered to hornblende. One thing we could do is we could just hit this with the XRF, and let's see. I'm going to hit that brown spot, and let's see what we get. I think that's something we need a little bit of compositional information to constrain the possibilities here. So I'm going to put that back over there.
These machines are cool.
They are cool. And then we're going to start the X-ray. It's shooting that way, away from Dylan and away from us. Okay, it's got some iron in it. So we're looking for a mineral like augite, which is pyroxene, which is going to have calcium, magnesium, iron, silicon, and oxygen. Okay, there's our magnesium and our silicon. Okay, cool. So I'll sort this in a second, but augite has a formula Ca, Mg, Fe. They can substitute for each other. Si2O6, something like that.
Is there any aluminum in there as well?
There shouldn't be a lot of aluminum in it.
Oh, silicon or aluminum. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, aluminum can substitute a little bit, but there shouldn't be a lot of aluminum in augite. So this does have a little bit of aluminum in it. Now I'm going to sort it by concentration, and let's have a look. So BAL is our balance. That means everything that it can't see,
Right.
which are the atoms that have a very light atomic number, like oxygen, hydrogen, things like that. So the most abundant is silicon, followed by calcium at 11%, aluminum at 8%, iron 6%, magnesium 4%. What do we get, Dylan, for the hornblende?
It's calcium, sodium 2,
Okay.
magnesium, iron, aluminum 5, and then aluminum, silica, oxygen, hydroxide.
This is probably a hornblende then,
Got it.
not a pyroxene. But a hornblende is sort of related to pyroxenes. They're in similar mineral families. And what happens if you add water to pyroxene, it converts to hornblende.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So this is either a pyroxene mixed with hornblende or it's pure hornblende. Either way, it's still consistent with it being a gabbro. And that's also consistent with the greenness and the ground mass, which is probably a little bit of the thermally converted material in what we call retrograde metamorphism. You don't have to worry about that. All right.
Look it up now, though.
So we could call this a hornblende gabbro. A poikilotic hornblende gabbro. Poikilotic horn.
I'm going to refer back to the video.
I'll put it in the caption. Poikilotic hornblende gabbro.
All right.
Hopefully someone, a rockhound out there, has seen this before. It would take a little bit more study to really get to the bottom of this thing. But I think poikilotic hornblende gabbro is pretty good for now.
Cool.
All right. How's that?
It's good for now.
Sounds good. It's got a lot of syllables. It sounds like it's probably
It sounds important.
All right. That's good. Okay. All right. And what else you got?
Wasn't a whole lot of it. I actually found this, I think, amongst a bunch of other jaspers and stuff.
Okay.
But it's interesting because the unpolished size has all these wavy patterns. And when I shine UV light, they kind of glow orange.
Oh, they do? Okay.
Yeah, they kind of fluoresce orange.
All right. Well, we'll take a look at that.
And I had a polished piece, but I gave it to my brother-in-law over Christmas, so this is the last piece I have of it. Yeah. It's really soft.
Do you mind if I try to scratch this side?
Oh, yeah, you can do whatever you want with it.
Just see.
It's very, very soft compared to all the other stuff that I've polished.
Yeah, I'm clearly making a scratch on that one. I can feel it with my fingernail. First of all, it's very dull looking.
Yeah.
Not dull emotionally, but dull like as opposed to not shiny.
Yeah, it doesn't seem real crystalline. Or
that could be because it's been sitting around in a pocket. And if I look right there, that's interesting. Those little features right there have a layering to it, right? As if it's been sort of built up. That's what we would expect in a material called travertine. I think you had.
Yeah, this is one of the guesses what it was. Because when I polish it's generally kind of a brown color. It has a lot of waves and cool features in it. It comes out when I polish it. So it's real pretty.
Where did you find it?
I found, it's weird. I found it over in while I was looking for jaspers. I just happened to see it sitting around.
Where's that?
Oh, it's near.
Okay.
So you go to 40 off Barstow, and then there's a Pisgah crater, that big lava field. So this was on the east side of the lava field.
Okay.
Yeah, didn't see a whole lot of that. I was mainly looking for jaspers and stuff, but I just saw this wavy looking white rock sitting there, so I picked it up.
All right. So first of all, it's very soft. It's got this irregular waviness to it. I would think that this is some kind of a calcium carbonate material. So the simple test of that is
acid.
That's right. Have you put acid on it?
You know what? This one I might have. I took notes, but I lost them, so I'm not sure.
Okay,
I'm going to think it's probably going to fizz.
Oh, that fizz.
Oh, it's fizzing good.
Like gangbusters. Okay. I don't know why gangbusters would fizz, but that's a weird expression. But you know what I mean.
Yeah.
All right. So I think this is a little chunk of travertine.
Okay.
Do you know how it forms?
I don't know how it forms.
It forms when you get, can form a variety of ways, but most commonly it'll form when you have some hot spring.
Okay.
So when water is heated and it's at pressure and high temperature beneath the earth, it can dissolve a lot more things.
Got it.
Than when it escapes and hits the atmosphere and cools down. It can't dissolve as much stuff.
Right.
So when it hits the air, it precipitates all the stuff that was previously dissolved. Offhand, I'm trying to think of what in Barstow would have a hot spring, but hydrogeological processes have a habit of being ephemeral. You know what I mean?
Right.
Meaning they show up and there'd be a spring for 1,000 years and then it'll go away. So there's nothing unusual about finding a travertine out in the desert. especially the tectonics are extensional. They're being pulled apart.
Yeah.
And that's going to allow a lot of faulting and groundwater to seep in and cause all kinds of weird thermal activity. So we get volcanoes out there after all, right?
Yeah, it was right maybe about a mile east of that black lava field at Pisgah.
Yeah, okay. This is a little beige colored. Travertine is usually a little bit lighter than this, so there might be some other stuff mixed in there. Maybe
definitely when I polish it, it takes a nice deep tan color.
Yeah. So I'm going to call that a travertine.
Cool.
I think that's what we got. Okay.
Cool.
Call that a travertine.
All right.
The last one.
The last one. So this one just this is the last piece I have of it. I found it with my jaspers out at same area.
Okay.
But it had a different color than the jaspers. It's kind of a mauve-looking color almost, and didn't quite look the same. It's about the same hardness.
Okay.
I didn't do an actual hardness test, but when I was polishing it, it felt about the same.
Okay.
But people at the club said they thought it might be a rhyolite, and I don't know enough about these things yet. I'm still learning these things, so I brought it just in case.
So they thought it's a rhyolite. So let's have a look.
If you wet it, you can see a lot more details.
Yeah, maybe we'll do that in a second. Let me Dylan, if you got like a little bit of water over there, let me look at the handlands for a second.
I did have a polished cab, but again, I gave it to my brother-in-law over Christmas, so I should have held on to it.
If it's a rhyolite, that means it's volcanic. There should be some what we call vesicles, which are little holes formed by expanding gases
and all that.
So let's see if I can find any in here. Oh, thank you. All right, let's see. A little bit of water. Okay, yeah, I'm not seeing those vesicles that I was looking for, but that's okay. That doesn't mean it can't be a rhyolite. And and you're right, when it gets wet, you can really see some structures in here. Yeah. I'm looking at these little pink bands in here. Those are what we would call flow banding.
Okay.
That are caused when the rhyolite is flowing.
Got it.
It's a very viscous material. Yeah. As it flows, it's going to kind of be a little turbulent. It's going to move stuff along. Some of the stuff's going to squish and get a little bit more glassy. So first of all, I agree it is a rhyolite. I agree with your rock buddies. And it's not unusual to find those out in the desert. There's a lot of volcanic activity of the past tens of millions of years out there. A lot of it's basaltic, but we do get these rhyolitic deposits.
It just caught my eye because I was looking for reds and yellows for the jaspers, and I see this kind of pink mauve piece sitting there. So
and even though if I don't see vesicles, that means it was squeezed out by either the overburden of maybe it was at the bottom of a flow and it got squeezed out. Or by flowing, it squeezed the vesicles out, or maybe it got a little metamorphosed. Who knows? And I think one other thing is when I look in here, it's pretty fine grained, but I do see some little crystals in there every now and then that we would call a phenocryst. Mm-hmm. And that's what you want to see for a volcanic rock is little crystals floating in a more fine grained surrounding. And I think I see some that looks like a chunk of quartz right there. There's probably it could be biotite, a little biotite, phenocryst in there. Mm-hmm. There's a crystal there. It looks like what we call a sanidine crystal. It's got a little cleavage to it. It's kind of shiny. Sanidine is a feldspar that we commonly will find in a rhyolite. So I think I've seen examples of both sanidine and quartz phenocrysts, which are little crystals that are floating in the magma. It's a little pink. Yeah. And that's pretty common to have rhyolites that are older. They kind of age. They become a little more pinkish color. It just felt a little different than the jaspers. The whole look of it, the way it polished. So the next step would be to go to the National Geologic Map Database and go look out there and see where the biggest tertiary volcanic deposit. Tertiary is the time period. Okay. And these rhyolites are most common as tertiary. And so I would go look on a geologic map. Okay. Go find. Right. And probably near there, $10 says that within 50 miles of there is a large tertiary rhyolitic volcanic deposit. Cool. All right. Yeah, that helps. Thank you. Good. So let's sum up. So we started with the rock that got you started down a rabbit hole of rock hounding that will never end, I assure you. It won't. You can just call it a calcilicate. What was the next one? Oh yeah, thanks. We had this poikilotic hornblende gabbro, which really means that it was a poikilotic gabbro that's experienced a little bit of hydrothermal urolitization. Like the Ural Mountains. The Ural Mountains? Yeah. Urolitization is a really fancy word that we would use, not very commonly, by the way. I don't see that word show up very much. but it means the conversion of pyroxene to hornblende
Got it.
via addition of a little bit of water
Right.
under a little bit of temperature.
Cool.
Then we got our travertine, and we got our rhyolite, probably a tertiary rhyolite from the Mojave.
Yeah, I'm gonna go look that up.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right.
Awesome.
How's that feel?
Feels
Everything
great.
good? All
Thank
right.
you. Yeah.
Great.
It's just gonna be push me deeper down the hole.
All right. There's so many rabbit holes. So,
Yeah. Cool. Thank you so much.
No problem. Happy to help.
Yeah.
It was great meeting you, and
Yes.
thanks for coming in and bringing all your rocks.
And coyotes, right? So,
Good. Yeah, go Coyotes. Oh, that's right. You are a
I'm an alumnus.
Mike is an alum of Cal State San Bernardino.
Yep.
And in what?
My master's of public administration.
Master's of Public Administration. Okay. And what do you do for work?
I'm a graphic artist for the Superior Court of California, County of Los Angeles, but I telework here. I live in Loma Linda, so I
okay.
telework.
All right.
And
Good.
I'm trying to get into administrating and some leadership. So
Okay, great. Well, that's then rocks will be a nice break from Superior Court.
yeah, I mean,
guess.
a year ago, I had no interest. As soon as I found that green rock, I joined Orange Belt, you know,
Great.
and joined the groups. And then next thing I know, I have probably about 250 pounds of rocks now. I don't know what to do
wow.
with. So,
Okay. All right. Well, that sounds like the start of a good collection. So.
Yeah.
All right. It's time for the recap with Dylan. What do you think about Mike's rocks?
So the first one, that calc silicate that was a bit green. First of all, beautiful rock. I'm
Yes.
glad to see that that was something that got his juices flowing to get into the field of geology and rock hounding,
Yeah.
and a bit of lapidary. So yeah, that was, the green kind of struck me as some sort of like green schist, like metamorphosed rock. And so that was my inclinations. Though there was that smaller sample that had some stuff kind of like eaten away on it. And so when you guys were talking about a calc silicate, where it's, you know, partially like this carbonate, but then also partially silica rock, it definitely, that made sense, especially when he said he picked it up from the local mountains. And we have examples of calc silicate rocks in our local mountains. So
Yes.
yeah, that really did make a lot of sense to me, and very beautiful rock for a collection.
Very beautiful. And I think, you know, we dropped some acid all over the rock, and it was only in certain spots where it would fizz. So that means the calcite was limited to these certain areas. And I think those spots that looked like they'd been eaten away, those little holes, probably were basically calcite lenses, and they dissolve through groundwater or through rainwater, things like that. So that all makes sense to me, and you'd expect calcite to be there in a calc silicate. That's pretty normal. I do want to say there's one thing that it occurs to me that an alternate identity for that rock would be a metabasalt, because the rock was really hard, pretty dark all over the place. Calc silicates usually have a few more zones of some lighter colored minerals, a little bit more calcite, maybe a little bit more feldspar zones if it's in interaction with the granite, more diopside, that's obvious, garnets, things like that. So this one, because it was pretty dark, I wonder if it might be a metabasalt. And I say that because I've seen rocks that are similar to that, where they have these little lenses of epidote up in the Sierra Nevadas, and those are definitely metabasalts, not calc-silicates. I've seen some that are kind of like that out near Palm Springs, actually. So, you know, I can't shake the feeling that it could be a metabasalt, just because it was pretty dark rock, which means it was probably filled with a lot of mafic minerals. And so we'd have to dig a little more to really identify that one, I think. But the problem is that I've never seen a metabasalt in the San Bernardino Mountains. That doesn't mean they're not there. I'm just going off mostly what I've seen there that would fit that description would be things like a calc-silicate rock, metamorphic calc-silicate. So it's either going to be, you know, an epidote calc-silicate schist, or it's going to be an epidote metabasalt, one of those two things. Either way, there's definitely epidote in there. That stuff's pretty, huh?
Yeah, it is. Very beautiful. Kind of, some people don't like that particular mineral compared to other green minerals, but I like that one. Yeah.
It's got that pistachio green, but nobody eats pistachio ice cream anymore. Do you eat pistachio ice cream?
I do.
You do?
Yes.
Okay, so
Every time we go to the old spaghetti factory and you get that free ice cream at the end, I usually do the pistachio.
Well, that's very Italian of you. So, well, no wonder you like epidote so much. It makes you think we're about to have dessert or something. So that's good.
I don't lick that rock though.
And the next one, the gabbro.
A gabbro. Okay. Big fan of gabbros. I mean, igneous petrology being my thing, I do like gabbros. So this one though had that interesting kind of structure, being like those circular crystals that we described as like maybe poikilotic. So that was interesting and told us potential story for that. But yeah, that did strike me as like quite possibly a gabbro. That was where I was definitely leaning towards. And what were some of the minerals that though we were finding?
Well, based on the appearance, based on the hand lens analysis, and based on we did an XRF analysis of one of them. I think those were the blobs, the dark blobs, were hornblende. Pyroxene plus water through hydrothermal alteration will give you hornblende. And so that's what we call it, a hornblende gabbro, which sort of implies it's been altered. Mid-ocean ridge igneous rocks like gabbros and basalts from the ocean floor are pretty dry rocks. So they don't have enough water in them to make a hydrous mineral like a hornblende. So you need to add that through metamorphism through some other process. And there's also a lot of green in the ground mass. And so there are no green minerals in a mid-ocean ridge basalt except for, olivine. But these were not olivines. These were a different kind of a green. That kind of green comes from hydrous alteration of these minerals. Could be plagioclase going to epidote. It could be pyroxene going to chloride and amphibole, things like that. But all these things are indicative of some sort of hydrous metamorphism, green schist grade metamorphism, because the igneous material on the ocean floor, it's magmatic. That stuff's going to be white plagioclase, and very dark pyroxenes, black pyroxenes often, and or brown pyroxenes. Nothing green in a gabbro, unless it's an olivine gabbro, which is possible, but that green wasn't an olivine gabbro. It wasn't shiny, it wasn't clear. It was more of an opaque, kind of fuzzy-looking green that you get from metamorphism. But it all makes sense. It's all these are stuff from the ocean floor. It gets pushed up on land as part of this big, what we call an ophiolite deposit. It's kind of weird if you think about it. You got this subduction zone where we have gabbros and basalt going down, but sometimes it breaks and some of that gabbro and the ocean floor stuff gets pushed up on land. And that's the gabbro I think that we find up there. So it's a neat geologic process. It's a neat area. You ever been up there to Cambria?
Haven't been to Cambria itself. I've been around the area, but I have not been to Cambria yet. So maybe another rock hounding field trip for myself.
Yeah, it'd be fun. And then of course north of there is Big Sur, which is beautiful, has all kinds of great Franciscan assemblage exposures, serpentinites, more gabbros, all kinds of interesting bedded cherts and stuff. And Big Sur's fun. You ever been up there?
Big Sur, I think I remember going there as a kid. I've been definitely more towards the south, like San Luis Obispo, Morro Bay and such, seeing like the blue schists there in that area.
That's a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's very beautiful.
Well, next trip up there, you got a lot to see then. Go up to Big Sur, maybe, grow your hair long, join a commune, you'll have a lot of fun up there. It'll be good. All right, next rock is the travertine rock.
Okay, so yeah, travertine, that sample looked very cryptocrystalline. You couldn't see any grains in a visual analysis. It had that structure to it that I've seen sometimes, like flow banding can actually look somewhat like that, but the fact that it reacted with acid, it glowed under blacklight, which I know my calcite samples sometimes do also glow under blacklight. That's definitely a big hunk of calcite, and with that structure, very much like the travertines I've seen at Mammoth Hot Springs up in Yellowstone.
So how does travertine form out in the desert then? You know, desert's dry. To make travertine, we need hot water to come out, but it's a dry desert. So, you know, where are we getting all these hot springs out there in the desert? I think the answer is very simple. It's just it's an extensional tectonic environment. The whole Mojave Desert is crust that's being pulled apart. That's going to create these deep faults that go down and perhaps intercept a unit of groundwater. And there's magma because there's pretty young volcanoes out there, right? And so there's probably little magma chambers down there. And if that magma chamber is anywhere near one of these faults that's interacting with groundwater, it's going to heat the water up. That water is going to get hot and rich in minerals, and it's going to rise up and come to the surface where it's going to create some kind of hot spring. And when it hits the surface, it cools down and deposits all that rich mineral material, which creates travertine. So it makes sense that it would be out in the desert, even though it seems kind of weird to think of a hot spring like that in the desert.
Yeah, and it would make sense in a way for it maybe being kind of in a way ephemeral, just because the volcanism out there, you have like Lavic Lake volcanic field, which includes Pisgah crater. Those are all cinder cones, like monogenetic, one and done eruptions. And so if you have a magma chamber that's providing this heat and then it finishes its thing, it's no longer producing the travertine eventually. So
correct. Yeah. So I'm liking that travertine. And then, finally, we got the rhyolite right up your alley, huh?
Yeah, right up my alley. So I took a look at it and I was like, yeah, that's very much rhyolite. Yeah. It wasn't much of a question for me, but it still is kind of a neat sample that he brought in, very aesthetically pleasing. But yeah, he collected that from the same general area as I recall. So that whole area, as I recall, back in the Miocene was popping off volcanically, along with a lot of the southwestern United States area. So lots of caldera-forming eruptions, and produces, well, rhyolite among other things.
That's right. And so I'm glad we weren't here to see any of those big eruptions because they were pretty deadly. I guess one of the more recent ones is Long Valley Caldera, which produced a lot of rhyolite. That's maybe 5 hours north of us. And that was a big one. But there'll be another one, hopefully no time soon. But, yikes. But yeah, rhyolite had, it's also pink. A lot of the Western rhyolites, I think they age a little bit and get a little pink as they age. I'm not sure why that is, because rhyolites are usually more of a
like a white almost to
white, grays and tans, but they get a little pinkish. I don't know why. Do you know why that is?
I'm not exactly sure. I've seen some pinkish ones like up. Actually, the Long Valley Caldera has a few pinkish rhyolites.
It does, okay.
But I think a big famous one is in Nevada, as I recall. That's a very pink rhyolite. And
yeah, so I agree. That's a rhyolite. Mostly the flow banding, and there's little crystals in there that are volcanic that had sanidine and had quartz, and little black things that were probably
biotite, maybe.
Probably biotite. That's what you get typically in a rhyolite, right?
Yeah, I see those sometimes.
No other good explanation for it. That's the most obvious one. So. All right, well, there we go. Those are Mike's rocks of good variety today. If you'd like to bring in some rocks, please email us at whatsmyrock@yahoo.com. I'm Dr. Abstract. This is Dylan. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Until then, happy rock hounding.
Yeah, I've seen it all. That's why they call me a professional. I know you're proud of what you got, but this rock ain't worth diddly squat. I'm not saying that you'll never be wealthy, but this preoccupation doesn't seem healthy. Don't give up your day job, you better keep it a hobby on the weekend.